Nigeria's cybersecurity strategy unveiled.
As House of Representatives confirms appointment of service chiefs, Senate also confirms non-career ambassadors designate.
Mohamed Bazoum wins presidential runoff election in Nigerian Republic.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss or continue our conversation on challenges of law enforcement in Nigeria.
The current state of law enforcement in Nigeria is a source of worry to many, especially with the alarming dimensions of crimes and insecurity in the country. Yesterday, we began a conversation on the challenges of law enforcement in the country, and we had three guests who spoke quite frankly on the issue.
Former Governor of Edo State and former Chairman, Nigeria Law Reform Commission, Professor Osemen Osumbo, agrees that there is some level of enforcement, but the level is not up to what is to be desired. He added that every security breach should be investigated and security agencies properly equipped, but was quick to say that the Nigeria police has too many challenges and a single police, and it has become necessary to develop functions to states.
That's, of course, Professor Osumbo there. Now, Chairman, Board of Trustees of the Nigeria Police Trust Fund, that is former Inspector General of Police Suleiman Abba, said that law enforcement agencies must be taken seriously in terms of not just funding but also equipment, and that colonial hangovers affecting those agencies dealt with, because many Nigerians still see them, that's to say law enforcement agencies, as the enemy rather than collaborators for a peaceful environment.
And retired IG of Police Suleiman Abba added that the police, which is the lead agency in the fight against crime, is still grappling with insufficient funding, inadequate manpower, ineffective equipment, and lacks properly trained personnel. He further cited the location of police stations on obscure premises, even within places like airports, as an anomaly.
Now, he also said that internally the command structure of the police has, as it were, been polluted by officers themselves, and that sometimes decisions to promote officers ahead of their colleagues isn't right and therefore should be reversed and stopped.
Former Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice, Nasarawa State, Adapsun Tanimu, also joined us to explain that insecurity renders government efforts meaningless, but was quick to add that crime-fighting methods in Nigeria must be dynamic and must evolve with changing realities.
Well, Kyria, that's absolutely correct. Now, Adapsun further expressed concern over the conflict between some federal and state laws, as well as the duplication of duties among various security agencies, which it says sometimes even confuse the personnel as to what their real mandate is. Now, he said officers who try to enforce the law often become enemies of those who are protecting criminals. In other words, he was talking about the influences, whether political or otherwise, that sometimes impact on law enforcement. He said that the command theory, which is to say the command structure, is awkward because before actions are taken by officers on the field, it takes quite a while, and then sometimes this gives room for criminals to get away with their offenses. He further said that laws also are ineffective because of the interests of a number of individuals. The ideal situation for him is for Nigeria to ensure that the office of the Attorney General of a state or the Commissioner for Justice are separated, and for the federal level, Minister of Justice and the Attorney General of the Federation also separated.
Well, today we will continue with this conversation on challenges of law enforcement in Nigeria with a view to, of course, getting new guests to also air their views on this very important matter. Of course, we're also going to take a look at the annual General Assembly of the Ahmadu Bello University Zaria. Some alumni of the institution will also join us today. This is Good Morning Nigeria, broadcast live on the network service of the NTA. I am Kirian Umayo.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo, joining my colleague Kirian to welcome you to the program. We are live as always from our Abuja headquarters studios. Now we'll be joining our colleague for the highlights of the morning news, and that will be presently, but note that business news would follow, and thereafter we'll have Bayo Atoyebi, who should be with us for the newspaper review. Here is Chimobi Walter-Nanji now with the highlights of the morning news.
Hello, good morning, Kieran and Kingsley. It's good to see you this morning. Good morning, Nigeria. Here is the morning news. The National Cybersecurity Policy and Strategy 2021 has been unveiled by President Muhammadu Buhari, signifying the rejuvenation and renewal of his administration's promise and commitment to national security and economic prosperity. The critical compendium produced by the Office of the National Security Advisor in furtherance of sustained efforts at effectively confronting the dynamic nature of threats in Nigeria's cyberspace.
A rise in threats posed by cyber criminals and cyber terrorists who use the internet to cause apprehension. We are also observing a surge in the use of internet and social media for propagation of hate speech, fake news, subversive messages, and incitement of violence, which played a part in heightening tensions, causing unrest and spurring widespread acts of looting and destruction across the country.
Issues relating to security, governance and political developments in the Eastern Heartland were brought to the front burner as President Muhammadu Buhari granted audience to Governor Hope Uzodinma of Imo State.
It was on my invitation that the military came, and I did that because I know the situation was beyond the local arrangement. We needed help, and the help was given to us. Those that came, through their intelligence, identified where these people were, and I can tell you, all the people arrested, all the rifles recovered are intact. The people are under interrogation. Not even one soldier or one of those militants died in the process. You recall that before I became the governor, the head of administration set up a judicial panel of inquiry to look into accusations and allegations of lands. I am not directly involved. It is a position taken by government. There's a difference between governor and government. The government of Imo State sealed their property, and I think that if there's anything anybody considers that is not right, the person should go to court to address the issue.
Developing a sustainable food system is never been more urgent and important than now due to the challenges of population growth, poverty, COVID-19 and economic fallout, hence the partnership with all stakeholders in achieving food security. This was the submission of the Vice President, Professor Yemi Oshibajo, at the Nigerian UN Food Summit's Inception Dialogue.
Also questions around ensuring environmentally sustainable production practices, creating empowering jobs and livelihoods, and building capacities to ensure sustainable and healthy food systems. Now, these issues require expertise and experience, but also the views of those who will literally be at the receiving end of these plans.
This is happening through the adoption, but also domestication of policies and costed strategic plans, which emphasize increased reliance on domestic funding and a well-coordinated multi-sectoral and multi-stakeholder approach comprising of government, civil society organizations, private sectors, as well as donors.
Now to the National Assembly. The Senate has confirmed the nomination of the appointment of 5 nominees, including the immediate past service chiefs, for appointment as non-career ambassadors designate. The confirmation followed the consideration of the screening reports presented by the Senate Committee on Foreign Affairs. In the same vein, the House of Representatives has confirmed the presidential nominees for appointment as service chiefs at Tuesday's House plenary. And a 14-member ministerial task force has been inaugurated to take charge of driving the digital switch-over process. Inaugurating the task force at a media briefing in Abuja, Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed, who is equally chairman of the task force, restated that the process is hinged on the massive job creation and huge revenue generation for the nation's economy and investors alike.
We have no more excuses for not rapidly rolling out the DSO across the country. We will pursue a private sector DSO, that there will be no more subsidies, either for set-top boxes or signal carriage, and that the process must be self-sustaining.
Now to health, where the Nigerian Center for Disease Control (NTA) has announced 571 new cases of COVID-19 in Nigeria. The latest figures released bring the total number of confirmed cases to 153,187 infections in the country. A breakdown of the new cases from 20 states plus the FCT indicates that Lagos recorded the highest number for the day with 170 new cases, while Ogun has 65 new cases. Others are the FCT with 45, Kwara 34, Abia and Enugu has 32 each, while Kano recorded 25 new cases. Oyo with 22 new cases, Ondo 21, Rivers and Kaduna has 19, Benue 18, Bayelsa and Kebbi has 12, while Nasarawa has 11 cases. Akwa Ibom recorded 9, Delta 8, Ekiti has 6, and Niger has 5. The day's tally is completed by Bauchi and Imo states recording 3 new cases each. A breakdown of confirmed cases by states indicates that Lagos has the highest with 54,882, followed by the FCT with 19,064, while Plateau comes third with 8,833 cases. With the latest development, 129,943 cases have been successfully treated and discharged, while 1,874 patients have unfortunately lost their lives. And elsewhere, Mohamed Bazoum, a candidate for the presidential election in Niger, has won the presidential runoff elections according to provisional results by the National Independent Electoral Commission. He pulled 55.75% of the votes against the opposition candidate, Mahamane Osmani, who had 44.25%. The commission announced the commission pegged voter turnout at 62.91%. It said that Mohamed Bazoum received 2.5 million votes against 1.9 million votes for Mahamane Osmani out of a total of 7.4 million voters. The commission also maintains that the results are provisional and must be submitted to the analysis of the Constitutional Court. Recall that in the first round of the polls, Bazoum received 39.3% of votes, while Osmani managed almost 17%. Earlier, the opposition denounced an electoral hold-up demanding the immediate suspension of the publication of results. And that's the morning news. The program continues with Kieran and Kingsley just after the break. Just stay with us.
I bring you wonderful news. The village headmaster is coming back to your screen. Mo wire abi mi o wire. Teacher yo mo, a fẹ́ lọ wá nǹkan jẹ. Teacher yo mo, a fẹ́ lọ wá nǹkan jẹ. Ọmọ onírẹsì ti dé. Ọbẹ̀ rẹ̀ sì ta sánsán.
Better school for last giddy. Not be all this on a rugged, yes school for Ijabi. I don't know for you.
It's called Oja Village. Kadesi, we no happy at all.
And I know that even you too, you are getting a lot of orders. Hey, we are trying, shall sweep her leg out. She was standing there. Sweep it.
I love you so much.
And how did I give you the impression that I was interested in that position?
50-year anniversary.
You mean anniversary?
I mean, I talk with that now.
Not for me. Not for me because of Pamio.
Get your limited edition packs now before the final whistle blows.
Dialogue, empathy, love, and unity. These are vital components of nation building.
For all to be well, we appeal that we should refrain from volatile, provocative, inciting messages and language.
Let's build and not destroy.
My culture preaches peace. My culture preaches peace. My culture preaches peace. 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 My culture preaches peace.
Even our religion
preaches peace.
If our culture preaches peace, remember your culture. Use your voter's card. Vote peacefully
and wisely. We are one.
This message is from the National Council for Arts and Culture.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, at the joint session of the Senate Committee on Banking, Insurance and Other Financial Institutions, Central Bank of Nigeria explains its decision to halt financial institutions from transacting in cryptocurrencies. That story and more with our correspondent, Comfort Amodu.
The Securities and Exchange Commission says it is committed to enhancing financial inclusion in the country via technology. Director General of the SEC, Lamido Yuguda, stated this at the joint session of the Senate Committee on Banking, Insurance and Other Financial Institutions, Capital Markets and ICT and Cybercrime in Abuja.
We believe that fintech will not only bring efficiency to the capital market, but will also serve as a veritable tool for advancing Nigeria's financial inclusion agenda. However, there is a need to develop an appropriate regulatory framework to ensure the safety of innovation to investors and preserve market integrity.
On ban on cryptocurrencies, the Central Bank Governor, Godwin Emefiele, while briefing the committee, revealed the Apex Bank has commenced further investigation into the activities of cryptocurrencies, which he insists is being used to facilitate money laundering, scam, and a means which kidnappers receive ransom, as well as an instrument used to finance terrorism, not just in Nigeria, but in other crimes as well.
For avoidance of doubt, we have tasked our banking supervision, our payment system, and our IT departments to conduct a thorough investigation into the activities of current exchanges and their major players. The result of the investigation will lead to better understanding of the activities and may be unveiled to all in due course.
The chairman of the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, Professor Bolaji Owasonye, said virtual assets and cryptocurrencies are risky for implementation in Nigeria as it poses serious legal and law enforcement risk to the country.
Much recently, cryptocurrencies played an active role in the NSAS protests. Those who made contributions did not want to be opaque. So the question that we should ask ourselves is, how prepared are we to be able to protect Nigeria and Nigerians from the damage or the risk that cryptocurrencies are posed to? So I think we have to make haste slowly and look at our own vulnerability.
All right, many thanks, Comfort, for that package. Next is newspaper review.
Newspaper reviewer Bayo Tebe is with us in the studios. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kingsley. Good morning. Good morning, Kirian.
Good morning,
Nigeria. Thank you.
All right. Shall we begin with the Daily Trust newspaper? Right. Daily Trust newspaper below the nameplate. We have a Zenith Bank declares 8.4 trillion asset base leads Nigerian banks. It's on page 18. Gridlock. NPA Lagos meet as strokes E-color begins. So page 18. Federal government targets 1 million jobs from digital switchover. The full details on page 4. Boko Haram, many killed, dozens injured as explosions rock Maiduguri. It has 4 riders. 9 boys playing football among the dead. Kaleri, Kwange, Adam Kolo area is affected. Zulum visits hospitals as doctors battle to save victims. It's a first major attack on capital in years. On page 5 is where you get details of the... Now, the photo story here shows many residents of Maiduguri, scampering, for cover, during that explosion. It's kind of a pandemonium in Maiduguri yesterday after Boko Haram fighters fired mortar bombs into the state capital. Now, below that, banditry. What we are witnessing is terrorism. That's according to governors. It's in page 6. McBan moves to stop cattle sales to south, threatens to sue Autumn, as Autumn of what the governor of Benue State. It's on page 6. Matawale rules out defection, says Yari Marafa, not my match. It's on page 32. Military recaptures Mate from terrorists. That's on page 5. Kingsley.
All right. We also take a look at the Nation newspaper. Above the nameplate, service chiefs. We will secure Nigeria. That's on page 3. Decision on cryptocurrency in our interest, says Emefiele. That's the governor of Central Bank. And one other headline there, House probes $2.6 billion AKK gas contract for content violation. Then below the nameplate, you have the following headlines. Gunmen kill policeman, loot armory in station attack at Benue to pay new wage. Buhari canvasses new cyber security strategy. That should be cyber security coordination strategy, because the strategy document was unveiled yesterday. Now, Labour rejects plan to allow negotiation of wage by states. And the lead story is what Kirian read earlier. Troops and Boko Haram fighters in unified gun battle. 10 feared killed, 47 injured. Seized Marte recovered from terrorists. And then right at the foot of the front page there, just above the advert, you have White Plateau rejected Ruga. by Lalong, that's the state governor, and FCTA suspends monarch, page 5. Bayo.
Thank you very much, Kingsley. Well, let's start with the story on Maiduguri. Gunmen suspected to be Boko Haram have attacked parts of Maiduguri. They attacked 3 locations, Gwange area, Adamkolo, and Kaleri. And it is reported that they embarked on just shooting into residence area. They were using some rocket-propelled grenade. A journalist told Daily Trust that a rocket landed in the home of his neighbor and killed 4 people. The Punch also reports about there have been 13 deaths and about 40 injured. Governor Babagana Zulum has visited the injured in hospital. It will be recalled that the terrorists had attacked Marte, which is in the fringes of Lake Chad. The chief of army staff, who was in Dikwa, challenged and addressed troops and challenged them not to let the nation down, and they have since liberated Marte from the insurgents. Marte is said to be on the fringe of Lake Chad, and it has several unmanned borders, which makes it very porous, and fighters come in and out of Nigeria across the border to carry out attack. Also, Governor Hope Uzodinma says that it is at his invitation that the military came to Osu and Olu local government area of Imo State. He told State House correspondent that during the NSAS riot, a lot of property were damaged. Police stations were burned, soldiers were killed, and rifles were removed. Said that the military were invited to dislodge the so-called Eastern Security Network. Many of the operatives are said to belong to the proscribed IPOB. Meanwhile, 9 members of the East Security Network have been arraigned in an Owerri magistrate court. They face a 1-count charge of murder. Among items recovered from them were a police belt, face masks linked to policemen that were killed in Olu axis between the eve of Christmas and January 25th. They have since been remanded in an Owerri correctional sector. Still in the southeast, there are violences reported in Abia and also in Ebonyi, where between the Eza and Effium community. It may be recalled that Governor of Ebonyi State visited Effium and gave instructions that anybody who was seen with a gun should be shot aside. The crisis there seemed to have simmered, but there has continued an underground killing that is going on in Ohaku local government area. The Senate has considered and confirmed the former service chiefs and a top military officer as non-career ambassador. The Senate received a report at plenary of its Committee on Foreign Affairs. The chairman, Mohammed Bulkachua, reported that the committee found the ambassadors, non-career ambassador designate fit and proper. They had the required exposure, conduct, and character, as well as the experience for the general performance that is required of them. Senate Minority Leader Yenaya Abaribe drew attention to a petition which he says had drawn attention of the Senate that the Senate had on 3 resolutions called for the dismissal of the service chiefs. The Senate President, however, overruled, saying that they are not before the Senate to be confirmed and nominated as service chiefs. He suggested that they be posted to our neighboring countries where their experience with terrorism will be benefited and they will be able to advise accordingly. On cryptocurrency, the governor of Central Bank, Godwin Emefiele, has told the Senate that cryptocurrency is not legitimate money because it is not created and backed by any central bank. Mr. Godwin Emefiele told the committee, Central Bank, he said, operations of cryptocurrency are dangerous and opaque, adding that apart from its usage in contravening the law, the usage of cryptocurrency is also unregulated and unlicensed. He said that issues related to cryptocurrency are tied to terrorism, financing, money laundering, purchase of arms, and also tax evasion. The Independent Corrupt Practices Commission, as well as the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit, also were at the Senate, and they also asserted that cryptocurrency is a channel for funding violence and terrorism.
Well, we discussed cryptocurrency some time ago on this program, and some of the guests actually had to let us know that in some nations, their own central bank acknowledge the fact that cryptocurrency is legitimate in terms of doing business. But of course, like you said, in Nigeria, the central bank has not actually endorsed the use of cryptocurrency, but not to say that it is not used across the globe. That's one aspect of it. Another thing I want to raise, Kingsley, is the fact that with all the military setups, in Maiduguri area, how come that Boko Haram still has the capacity to attack Maiduguri, the city center?
Well, from the reports coming in, it's not as if they invaded Maiduguri. They came within the outskirts and started shooting into the city, and at 3 locations. Okay. It's kind of shoot blindly to anywhere, rocket-propelled grenade in residence. And this is not unconnected with this recent pressure from the Nigerian military. There's been pressure on them in Sambisa Forest. I understand the area of farmland belonging to Shekau has been raided by the military and they have been routed. Also in Marte, where they came in and were attempting to hoist their flag, they've not been driven back. And there's pressure through in the area of Dikwa. So it's just like an orag. You try to mend it here, before you know it, it's torn in another place. Because they use guerrilla tactics, they are not a conventional army that are moving in a format. They come and give you surprise attack here and there. And it's been a long time they've not been able to come into Maiduguri city.
Yes. Well, they said the attacks took place on the outskirts, as you indicated, University of Maiduguri itself. But the more plausible explanation is what you also indicated. Now, the Chief of Army Staff gave marching orders to the troops to, within 48 hours, take over Marte from the terrorists. And I think that they achieved that.
They have already.
Yeah, they achieved that. Of course, he also indicated that in achieving that objective, take no prisoners. So they are being battered on several fronts. And when you are being battered on several fronts and you are a guerrilla outfit, you can engage in hit-and-run tactics, which is precisely what they have done. Which is not to say that Boko Haram elements were not always embedded in and around Maiduguri itself.
Because they were at a shooting range.
Yes.
Possible shooting range that got into the city, which means that they were nearby.
They were embedded. No, they could have been embedded. I mean, they have sometimes behave like the civilian population. Some of them, you don't know what they may have. But the key thing is that in recent weeks, we have seen the onslaught by the Nigerian armed forces against Boko Haram. And if you saw the video on social media after the troops overran the so-called Shekau farm, they were asking him to come out from wherever he was and then engage them if he wishes to engage them. But one of the more curious aspects is just understanding how well resourced the terrorists are.
Yes.
Because the kind of gun trucks that they use. You know, each time you take out their gun trucks, each time you rout their men, you see them coming in virtually brand new vehicles, brand new trucks, sophisticated weaponry that ordinarily should be in the hands of state actors.
Exactly.
So I think this is part of what I'm sure the new service chiefs have their jobs well cut out for them. And General Irabo, who of course is the Chief of Defense Staff, is very familiar with that location. Even the Chief of Army Staff.
Yeah, these are the things that commanders
they have
the theater command.
They have a good supply chain. And
in fact, the Chief of Defense Staff was the one that established the theater operation at the outset.
That's right. So I think that it's important that this is a battle that, of course, will continue to call for the support of all Nigerians, so that we can reduce it to the barest minimum, and thereafter let them peter out. It is clear now that Boko Haram cannot establish a stake anywhere in Nigeria.
All right. Two other stories.
All right, but
okay.
Time is not on our side for now. I would like to thank you for your analysis and hope to see you again tomorrow.
Thank you
for more on newspaper review. This is Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we shall continue our conversation on the challenges of law enforcement in Nigeria.
The counsel of our fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths Let's build our nation together.
Nigerian youths are about the greatest asset the country has at the moment. It is therefore not surprising that the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari is strategically responding to the yearnings of the youth through multiple projects and programs. Youth entrepreneurship support years by Bank of Industry, the Youth Investment Fund by the CBN, and several other conditional cash transfer programs. Recruitment of 774,000 social workers, majority of whom are youth, and so many other projects that are beneficial to youths directly or indirectly. If the administration can do all this, definitely with a degree of patience and time, it can achieve more. Nigerian youths must come together to say no to terrorism, no to vandalism, and no to all disruptive tendencies. Hashtag Youth for Greater Nigeria. Pacifying the youths, unifying the nation.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous, whether you do it for fun or for political gains. Real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
The second wave of the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic is upon us.
To safeguard lives of our people, government has signed the Health Protection Regulations, which makes wearing a face mask mandatory in public places.
Wear a mask. Keep social and physical distancing. Avoid crowded places. Wash your hands regularly with soap and clean water. And use hand sanitizer.
COVID-19 is real. Do not be infected. Do not spread it. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
Well, we thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria up to this moment. And before we continue our conversation, which is on challenges of law enforcement in Nigeria, let's get this backgrounder from, of course, compiled by Abdul Salam Jubrin.
There are serious issues with respect to the efficient enforcement of the law. I would say there is a degree of enforcement. I don't think there is a total lack of enforcement, but the level is not up to what is to be desired. And as you rightly said, many people express the view that the problems of Nigeria are not really the issue of adequacy, the presence of the laws. The laws are there. But the problem is the judicious and efficient enforcement of those laws.
By the regulations, every police officer is responsible for his actions. It is not same as what happens in the military, where loyalty is number one. Order, loyalty is number one. No, in the police, it is expected that as an individual police officer, you use your discretion in the discharge of your responsibilities. And that is because it is assumed that you are trained enough to use your discretion properly. Because for every of your actions, you alone will be responsible. There is nothing like my Oga gave me order to shoot somebody and you shot him.
The issue, challenges of law enforcement are issues that we have to look into it seriously. Since the Constitution provided clearly that the primary purpose of government is to provide security and welfare of its people. where you don't have security, even if government provides welfare, it is meaningless. And this security cannot be attained without obedience to lawful orders. And therefore, those laws made need to be enforced so as to provide the necessary security that people will at least enjoy whatever welfare packages are provided by the government.
All right, now those were excerpts from our conversation on the subject matter yesterday. Today, we are having a new set of guests to also discuss the ramifications of the challenges of law enforcement in the country. With us in the Abuja studios, we'd like to welcome a human rights lawyer, Frank Tietie. Frank, delighted to have you this morning.
Thank you, always my pleasure.
All right. And then joining us from our Lagos Network Center, it's our regular guest, also a retired Assistant Inspector General of Police, Bala Hassan. AIJ Bala Hassan, delighted to have you this morning.
Nigeria, thank you for having me.
We also have joining us via Zoom, Professor of Criminology and the member, Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption, and Tanibi Alamika. You're welcome to the program, sir.
I don't know. Professor Alamika's audio there. We'll hope that that is sorted out. Well, gentlemen, just as an addition to the background, which of course had excerpts from our conversation yesterday, perhaps we should also preface to these contributions from you guests with some of the points that we raised yesterday, that namely, the country is facing a great deal of challenges in terms of security and just rampant lawlessness. And the view has been expressed in several quarters that if there had been more efficient law enforcement, a number of these bigger issues that we are dealing with today, whether kidnapping for ransom, banditry, or even terrorism, could have been tackled much earlier, and therefore we wouldn't be in the current situation. So let's get your own take now on what the challenges have been with regard to law enforcement. We know that there are many problems with the law enforcement agencies. We also have heard about political and even elite interference in law enforcement. But what is your take on the issue, beginning with Frank Tietie?
Well, thank you very much. I think let's go straight to the point. The Section 14 has been overflogged. And when you consider that the Section 14 of the Constitution talks about security and welfare of the people. That seems to be known by everybody now. It's become a stereotype statement. But simply put, the goal of government is law enforcement and nothing more. Whether it is NAFDAC enforcing standards of drug and food, or it's the police enforcing criminal laws, the essence of government generally, beginning from the entire public service about law enforcement. The challenge we have faced is that we continue to see our laws giving so much room for the place of discretion in law enforcement. And discretion has been abused terribly. In the last 3 decades, I would say, that I have experienced practically in our country. Now, you can imagine that the policeman on the street exercises a lot of discretion without being subjected to much control, and he trades with that. I don't want to go into so many details, but consider that I want to dwell more in terms of a solution-oriented discussion. We need to have less of discretionary approaches to our law enforcement and more of the introduction of technology. Now, okay, let us look at those of us who live in Abuja, where you find out that traffic offenses are quite rife. But it's all about the human element, whereas government in time past has done so much to ensure that traffic management in this city is actually automated with cameras and central base stations that actually determine what goes on in the city. But these have been frustrated because we enjoy, as a culture, it's a problem. As a culture, we need to understand that the national culture, which we refer to in the Constitution as ethos, is missing. Unfortunately and sadly, It is the military, only the military, that has been able to enforce one form of culture, national culture, or the other. And a lot of thanks to the NTA in those years. But you'll find that the continued reign, the continued supremacy of the human being, the human element in law enforcement, whether it's with the police or with other prescriptive law enforcement or corrective law enforcement areas. Let me close this opening by telling you that the problem is when I'm not talking about law. I'm talking about regulations that are made pursuant to laws. Regulations are either made by the Director General or the Minister. Those regulations become so difficult, so punitive, and you'll find out that it's as if they are meant with the intention to extort and make things difficult for the ordinary Nigerian. And so when a law enforcer appears to be, relaxing on those measures, it will seem as if he's doing you a favor. And their favors are not for free. So the corruption element in our law enforcement started when we failed to realize that law is not only punitive, it's meant to be corrective, it's meant to be prescriptive. The goal of law enforcement ultimately is to ensure that there is order in our society. So the ordinary policeman, the man that works in NAFDAC, the man that works in the ministry, must have the basic philosophy that my role is to ensure that there is order in the Nigerian society so that it can become attractive to the rest of the world.
All right, thank you. And let's go to Lagos, where we have Assistant Inspector General Police, retired Bala Hassan. Sir, you were in the saddle a couple of years ago, and police, of course, is the lead agency when it comes to law enforcement. But we also have other law enforcement agencies. But why has it really become so difficult for us to ensure that laws that are made to cater for society or bring about peace in society are having issues being enforced? What are the critical issues that you think are making it so difficult for these laws to be enforced in our society?
Well, good morning, Nigeria. Well, when you talk of law enforcement in Nigeria, basically you are talking of agencies responsible for enforcement of laws like the police, the army, the civil defense, immigration, customs, LASMA, not other groups that are basically privately owned. But when you talk of law enforcement, generally, the principal focus is Nigerian Police Force being the lead law enforcement agency. And why we are here today is because of general insecurity in Nigeria and which way forward to fix this insecurity. Basically, what I think, in the risk of repeating what the retired IG, the distinguished retired IG Suleiman said, we have a lot of problems, challenges facing the Nigerian police. If you fix it, I'm sure other smaller problems will just fit in. Because if you look at the recruitment, recently there have been hula baloo between the Police Service Commission and the force headquarters about who is to recruit. Because of unemployment in the country, there are a lot of tremendous pressure on people to get their words employed. Through that, other criminal opportunity creeps in, to the extent that we had stories that people were using money to influence entry into the Nigerian police force. I expected that police should take the best people, the most qualified people into the police force. Once you take the best, you train them, give them the appropriate training, then you get better police officers that will produce better law enforcement for Nigerians. But right from the word go, if the entry has problem, definitely it will reflect on the quality of the police law enforcement will give Nigerians. So here I will expect to bridge gap between the force headquarters and the police service community to ensure that no lacuna is left. Every person that is taken into the police force is of impeccable character. That way we can give better service to Nigerians. And once we are able to fix Nigerian police force, I'm sure all other law enforcement agencies will take cue, and that will be better for Nigerians as a whole.
All right. Thank you very much, AIG Bala Hassan. Let's now go to Professor Etani B. Alemika, who is with us via Zoom. Professor Alemika, again, just to restate part of what we discussed yesterday, some hold the view very strongly that our problem isn't the availability of laws. That in fact we have a plenitude of laws on virtually everything and anything you can think of, but that the problem resides in inadequate enforcement. Why has this been so?
Thank you. I think we need to go back. Yes, we have a lot of laws. We need to understand the sources, the historical evolution of those laws, their relevance and appropriateness, and the last stage is their enforcement. We must recollect that the problem we have with law enforcement agencies in Nigeria are often not the level at which we intend to analyze them. How did we come about the legal system itself within which the law enforcement agencies operate? Historically, we find that this legal system was transported. They were not indigenous to our people. They are not well understood. So there's some form of alienation between Nigerian people and the type of laws that we have, and even the way that law enforcement perform their function. That's a historical factor that I consider as a challenge. There is also a number of structural factors. For example, our economic system as it is today is underdeveloped, is poorly managed, and it cannot generate adequate employment, adequate means for standard of living, adequate livelihood, and meaningful existence. And of course, this disposes, this factor would dispose people to some form of criminality. At the political level, honestly, we must also recognize that the political capture, especially among elite of the law enforcement agency, is a hindrance. Look at you are talking inadequacy of law enforcement officials, but look at the number that are deployed to individuals to safeguard them. So you find about 25% of police are deployed to guard political and economic elites. The same applies to the civil defense, and the rest of the public are left without that. So it's an elite capture at one level. A second level, which I actually call elite kidnapping, is where people who otherwise more qualified are not allowed to be recruited because the list of legislators, ministers, and economically powerful people must be satisfied before you allow for merit and competition. It's an elite kidnapping of these institutions, and they cannot function under those levels. At the social level, of course, we have the challenge of the erosion of values that promote, lawfulness, order, and peace. So we are dealing with everybody believe they can do whatever they want to do and get away with impunity. So our attitude even to restraint of law required for peaceful existence is also a major problem. There are institutional factors like the organization of the agencies, the supervision of the agencies, and the supervisions within the agencies. Of course, the one we often talk about is capability in terms of skills, resources, their responsiveness to law enforcement. So I think whatever we need to do, we must take all these factors into consideration. Very often we think we don't take these factors in a holistic manner. We deal with them one by one by one by one. And as you are dealing with one, you are actually distorting the other factors. So in a holistic manner, we have problem with our economic system, which generates crime. We have a political system which does not only generate crime, encourage impunity. We have institutional problem of under-resourcing, lack of skills, lack of capability, poor personnel technology mix. Very often we are still emphasizing personnel in the age when technology can do the work of thousands of officers without the risk that the officers themselves will encounter in the field. So for me, these are the broad issues. It's not just that we have laws. What is the quality of those laws? And then the difficulty for citizens even to comply with the law. There are many times you want to comply with the law, the unavailability of means of compliance, it constitutes a disincentive for complying. In other countries, for example, if you have a road traffic, all you need to do is to get your ticket and go and pay for it. Here, you have all kinds of inconveniences associated with it. You are intimidated. for goodness sake, what is the whole idea that if you arrest people in Abuja or in Lagos, you ask them to go for a psychiatric test? That is the level of stupidity we have introduced in our law, and in our law. And this infuriates citizens and indeed engender lack of cooperation between law enforcement officers and the citizens. So we need to take all of them in holistic. Some of them are at the structural level, some are at the structural level, and some of them at the social level. That is the attitude of Nigerians.
Well, thank you so much, sir. We'll actually return to you in the course of the program. And let's return to our studio here once more. Many have expressed worry over the fact that persons who break the law in Nigeria often get away with it. Today in Nigeria, government has been forced to be negotiating with bandits, negotiating with persons who are outlaws, those who have armed themselves illegally, and of course exhibiting mayhem in the society. Now, when we talk about law enforcement, how have we degenerated to this level where we have to be negotiating with those who ordinarily should have been enforced or forced to obey the law of the land?
Thank you, because I'm happy you used the word degeneration. Prof gave the impression as if our problem started because we inherited a legal system and a police system from our colonial masters. We once had a very wonderful law enforcement situation in our country before now. Even in my short life, I've experienced it while I grew up in the Bendel state. As diversified as it was, you knew that you had a police. You knew that every offense that was reported to the police was investigated and then charged to court, and persons found wanting were punished appropriately to serve as deterrents. We had a great time in law enforcement in this country at the time. So we degenerated. So what was responsible for this sort of degeneracy? I'm happy Prof used the word, cited the example of traffic offenses. The degeneracy began when we didn't pay attention to little things, to small things. When we thought that, by letting this criminal go free because he's an Uroboman or because he's an ethic, and I'm in charge of the police station, I'm in charge of the investigation. It started like that. So then you need to look at issues of social justice. When people began at any time to think that the law wasn't fair, its enforcement wasn't fair, then there became a growing, disenchantment with the standards the law provides. Let's get one thing very clear. And I tried to make it in my opening statement, and Prof emphasized it. And it goes like this. There is a distinction between a statute, between a law that has been made by the National Assembly or the State House of Assembly. But there's a distinction between those laws and the regulations that were made by the director who heads last month, for example. It's unthinkable that a State House of Assembly or a National Assembly will say for a traffic offense, somebody should go for a psychiatric test. So the perception is that, no, these people who operate the law, and let me tell you how it happens. For example, if you get caught in a traffic by a police officer who is skewed, who does not understand that he's there to serve Nigeria, to oppose standards, he will say, look, you just beat the traffic light now, and there over there you can see the Federal Road Safety Corps ambulance is waiting to take you to the psychiatric hospital, and then you will be paying for the test for 75,000, and thereafter your car will be impounded for another 30 days. But you can avoid all of this if you know what I mean. So when people began to think that law was made against them, contrary to, I'm a product of the NTA. When I say that, people wonder, because I watched the NTA from 1979 to the 2000s, and we had a national culture at that time because the NTA had enjoyed the monopoly of being the largest broadcasting station in Africa and in Nigeria at that time. It was easy for us to understand as young people that these are the standards and these are the way as students. But that form of national culturalization is missing. And we no longer have this. What we believe is that law is meant for some people, and then it is meant to deal with those who don't have people connections, while it is also meant to promote the pockets of those who are in position of authority. That's why the policeman will say, how can you make such a law? So back to your question, the degeneracy is as a result of the fact that
We now inherited a national culture that doesn't believe in standard anymore. Law is not about punishing. Law is about prescribing the way orderly people should behave. Unfortunately, for over a long period of time, these men you call bandits today don't know how to live in a proper society because they haven't seen one. They haven't had the opportunity to experience one as people like us have done, even in the 80s and then late 90s. And they haven't. All they have seen is a perception that the big man goes to Abuja, he gets money from government, he comes to oppress us, the laws, he's above the law, and so why should he? So there's a rebellious move among these persons, especially the ones who believe that education has now become an access gives you access to state power, to state resources, not for the purpose of promoting the culture of order. There is nothing like order. The police exist in this stereotype statement called law and order. That is, law prescribes the standards, the police enforce the order, and then we have seen it work in this country. This country was a destination hub for foreign direct investment in the 70s, in the 80s, and even in the 90s. But when we began, even as government agents, even as law enforcement, began to send the message to our people and to the outside world that laws don't matter, you wonder why then would you call yourself a lawyer when you say law does not matter? But it is because we haven't give law the supreme place as it's supposed to be in our country. That's why we got there. Small things like that. That's how we got to that point where we now negotiate with terrorists, in our country before now. Who are you? We have all the resources. We have the men that are well trained. However, we were once terrorized by a band of armed robbers in Bendel State. They were brought to their knees. So it's unthinkable that an organized society that is so rich as Nigeria cannot be brought to its knees like this. It's because we are losing something. We lack a national cohesion that is based on the need for us to have an order that will preserve this society for ourselves and for our children.
All right, Frank Cheche, thank you very much. The cultural dimension that you just mentioned now also came up yesterday. More particularly, you've stressed on the civics aspect, what we refer to as our national ethos. We've lost our values, as you have indicated. Let's go over to our Lagos Network Center once again. AIG Bala Hassan. AIG Bala Hassan, you may wish to comment on some of the points that the other guests have made, but one question that I would like to ask you, which I would also think that is relevant to this conversation. We have seen how the police has grown into many organizations that also have responsibility for law enforcement. From 1976, you had the NSO, which is now the DSS. You have NDLEA created out of it, road safety created out of it, civil defense, and several others. The view has emerged also that now the various law enforcement agencies are having, as it were, a silo mentality. Ordinarily, in criminal procedure, it is the case that a police officer or a law enforcement officer who sees a person committing an offense in his view can arrest that particular individual. But I'm sure it is likely the case today that if some vandals were rupturing petroleum pipelines and the policeman, I'm not saying this to disparage the police, and the police officer were walking by, the police officer would most likely say, no, that's the responsibility of civil defense. Or the civil defense officer sees some persons with hard drugs and he says, no, that's the business of NDLEA. How can we reduce, or how can we overcome this silo mentality that sometimes also seems to be an impediment? Because by the time you don't apprehend criminals at the point or at the time they are committing an offense and they feel that they can always get away with it because you are not the one in charge, then we can begin to see, of course, a growth in some of the kinds of criminality that we have been seeing. What are your thoughts?
Well, this thing, as I earlier said, boils down to the training of officers that come into the police force. Because if you are properly trained, you know the basic that the police officer is employed to enforce all laws. So whether it's, that's why apart from the general law, the law says that if you see any person committing offense known to law, you can arrest him without warrant. Which law are we talking about? We are talking about pharmacy law, pharmacy acts, other miscellaneous act. You talk of Children and Young Persons Act, Firearms Act. So many laws in Nigeria. So I don't expect a police officer to see somebody breaking pipe, then he will say, okay, let him call civil defense. No. Any person, even there is a right of a private person to effect arrest, but he will hand over to the nearest police station. So I expect a police officer who is properly trained. That's where this issue of training must be brought to bear. We must recruit the best police officer, give them adequate training. And why do we get the adequate training for the police officers? It still transcends to how much does police get to perform its function as a national force. Although we appreciate the fact that in the past 3 years there have been improved in the budget of the police from 2019 to 2021, where police are given 447 billion to run. But is it adequate? Does this thing goes down to where it's supposed to go? Because most of this budget, in my thoughts, maybe from the center, because we have to, during our days, we've been talking of ensuring that an area commander has a patrol vehicle, he has money direct that comes to him, but it's never the case. It's never the case. So unless things transcend, it's not enough to give budget to the Nigerian police force. I will expect the present Inspector General of Police, the remaining 3 months are left for him to ensure that this budget, money allocated, transcends from the force headquarters to the zonal level, to the commissioner level. If possible, appropriate the money, let it go direct to divisional police officers. If it goes to the divisional police officers, they'll be able to buy their stationaries, they will be able to buy all they need, they will go on patrol. It's not a situation whereby somebody comes to report a case to the police, then they don't have vehicle. Then they have to tell the complainant to come and bring 2,000 naira to enter Okada or to use Keke Napep to go and effect arrest. That is uncalled for. The last speaker, the lawyer, was talking about good days during Benin, during Anini. During the time of Anini, we were also young police officers in Ilorin in 1986, but things were doing well. So in those days, a commissioner of police can go and build barracks, can inspect barracks, but a situation where we're able to start from the center. That is some of the issues killing the Nigerian police force. This too must be revisited before the IG leaves the throne. He must ensure that money is appropriated to the lowest division where they will be able to perform their functions. And talking about law enforcement, you cannot enforce law enforcement when you are doing differential promotions. Of course, in every regime, even when we are young officers, you see a situation whereby some few officers who work with the IG and the ministers are given some. But it's not that it will be free for all, whereby every person who has somebody in government can go and get a paper and be promoted to the next. It kills the morale of the men, because if I know that you are my junior, you are my DCO now, after 2-3 months you have become area commander on my top, it kills the morale. So we should always look at this in law enforcement. Additionally, issue of posting. The IG will ensure that postings are done according to those who deserve to be posted to a particular place. I was a junior DC when they carried me. I was a senior DC when they carried me, gave me acting capacity to go and be the CP in Edo State. Maybe based on merit. But a situation whereby the IG knows his men. But what I'm saying here is political interference. Most people who get the desired, what they call lucrative persons, are based on pressure from elsewhere. So there shouldn't be political interference from the political class. This is my brother, take him to Port Harcourt. This is my uncle, take him to Kano. This is my younger brother, take him to Lagos, as the case may be. Proper things should be done. Otherwise, when it kills the morale, you don't see the beauty of law enforcement. But when things are done properly, proper people are fixed where they should be, all this issue of having problems or enforcement of the law will not be seen in Nigerian police force. So Nigerian police force should go back to where it was about 30 years ago, whereby postings are done properly and the resources are allocated to the level whereby a DPO can do his work and area commander do his work without any recourse to the center. We don't need to refer to the governor of a state to give us vehicle. With the current police trust fund, I'm sure there will be enough money and on the budget to ensure that we may not depend on the governor who will give us vehicle and tell us to do something that is contrary to law. That way, there will be better law enforcement for Nigeria.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. You actually made the reference, to the issue of police being a national outfit, and that brings us to the issue of state police. In the past, in this country, the issue of state police has, became a national discourse, but it appeared that the majority of Nigerians did not buy into that. Now, let me bring in Professor of Criminology, Tanebi Elamika. Sir, is a state police a solution to Nigeria's law enforcement issues? Some insist that the current size of the police makes it difficult to fund the police. And of course, it also affects, their capacity and capability to actually enforce the law in many parts of this country.
Thank you. Again, let me go back to recap. You asked how did we degenerate into this level? And I think, again, degenerate means it got worse. I don't think we've ever had an optimum law enforcement in this country. Literature showed that very clearly. History of panels established from 1950s established clearly there were problem with law enforcement in Nigeria. Of course, it was better, but it was never optimum. If you recall, even the centralization of the police we're talking about today in 1966, when Aguiyi Ironsi established the panel that eventually recommended the merger of native police and the federal police, were as a result of complaints about law enforcement. It got worse, but we've never had optimum law enforcement. And again, I insist, when you have a disconnect between the laws that you are imposing on people and their understanding of the law, you will have problems. But the most important thing is, I think the question we'll be asking ourselves is, why is it our society is generating so much lawlessness that law enforcement becomes a problem? I think that's the critical question. Police, other law enforcement agencies do not cause crime. They respond to crime. So we should be more concerned about what factors that generate lawlessness in our society. Now coming to state police, there had been a lot of argument, and I think what I call a structural argument, which is unassailable. The structural argument says every level of government that enact law should have means for enforcing them. And therefore, if you have a federal system, the federal government should have means of enforcing their laws, the state should have a means of enforcing their law, and local government should have a means of enforcing their law. And of course, what that enforcement agency looks like is a different matter. I think in our present situation, people want a replication of Nigeria police force at the state level. And it is argued that it will be efficient. Again, I think I've read a lot in this area. There is, literature shows very clearly that there is no difference in efficiency and conduct among countries, which has a central police force and those who have decentralized police force. So it is not a question of efficiency. It is not a question of conduct. So it's a structural problem that we've adopted as a federal system. Another point that needs to be made about these, the need for state police is also, it must be realized that almost 90% of the law enforced by the Nigeria police are actually made by the states. About 90% of people in our correctional services are people who violate the laws of the state. So when the state argues that they are supporting federal agencies in enforcing the law, again, that begs the question, because those federal agencies are actually enforcing state laws, and therefore they ought to bear certain responsibilities. Should they then have a police that corresponds to that? I think the argument is, like I say, unassailable if you go by structural argument of federalism. But my worry is we have a lot of functions on concurrent list, education, and many other issues. Are they better performed at the state level because they are located at the state level compared to the federal level? We have a independent national electoral commission, and then we have state independent electoral commission. Are they performing better? Is the CX better performed, better behaved, compared to the national INEC? So I think this argument should not just be a fixation. It should be analysis of how well have the state performed in performing areas of their, we are currently allocated to them. I think when we do that, a state police, called by any name, could be established with a strong federal regulatory framework. But again, in arguing this way for state police, let me also say there is a difference between the police and policing agencies. Every state in this country have many policing agencies. They have many policing agencies. Somebody just mentioned LASMA and all those kind of agencies. They are policing agencies. I think the lawyer mentioned about withhold public service being law enforcement. Maybe I won't go to that wider, declaration. But indeed, there are lots and lots of environmental agencies that have capacity to regulate and, of course, to make initial arrests. All these are policing agencies. So I think when people talk about state police, it's not just a existence of policing agencies that can regulate and that can ensure, peace and enforce the law at those state level. For example, we're having problem. People are talking about ungoverned spaces, and they are talking of forests. There is nothing stopping any state establishing forest guard or park guards as it is in other countries. The current arrangement allows them. That's where the major crisis exists for today in policing. So I think we should go beyond simply saying if we have state police, it will solve all the problem. That is not realistic. We must ask ourselves, what are the factors generating so much lawlessness, crime in our society that require law enforcement? We must recognize that law is not the most effective mechanism for maintaining order. It is indeed a strong family institutions, strong educational institutions, strong religious institutions that are able to inculcate appropriate values and norms, and citizens are able to internalize them, that they do not even have disposition towards lawlessness and crime. I think it's the breakdown of the efficacy of this institution that we are facing today.
Professor Lemika, thank you very much. That's part of what I was going to ask you to elaborate on, how we deal with the factors of lawlessness in our society and how to also incentivize the citizens to be law-abiding rather than waiting for the law enforcement officers to compel them to abide by it. The example was cited yesterday in the course of our conversation that in some other jurisdictions, a person commits an offense and the person owns up to committing that offense. Here, you catch a person red-handed and his first reaction will be to deny. Elsewhere, your neighbor or even family members would telephone the law enforcement agents to say, look, see what our brother or our sister is doing. But here, as my colleague on the set said yesterday, blood is thicker than water. So, back to our studios, Frank Tietie. In our society, as part of what you have discussed, we have seen that against the grain that the law is no respecter of persons. The law is indeed a respecter of persons. And because everyone wants to feel respected, then we get on the loose of just being lawless, as it were. How do we get back to that original idea, that ideal of the law being no respecter of persons?
First, the average Nigerian, every Nigerian must understand, appreciate, and accept that law is good for him. Law is made in his favor and not against him. Law is not something you should escape. Law is something you should comply with. And when you fail, it's at your detriment when you fail to comply to laws. Let us not make a mistake by not distinguishing between law enforcement and security. Law enforcement generally is about standards, whether it's educational standards or labor standards or health standards. So when a law is made, you should, that missing element is that majority of us think that law is meant to catch us. Law is meant to make things difficult for us. And that's a kind of wrong message. Poorly crafted regulations, not laws. That distinction should be made. Regulations made by persons who are not well informed. And that goes to the root of standards. So
you know, we have always had problems with delegated legislations. And that's why we're saying those of us who run the executives in our state, in the federal government, and our local government, must ensure that everything they do must first, and that's why it's very important that the media comes into this, that everything government does must be perceived to be in the interest of the people. The moment it's done, then anybody, Prof, I'm happy Prof talks in sociological terms, anybody who does not conform to the popular norm becomes a deviant, and in that case, he is either ostracized, considered as someone to be punished for the purpose of correction, not necessarily to humiliate him, to make him feel less than the other person. Look, one way we have suffered and we've missed it in our country is to think that we can influence law enforcement for political reasons, for economic reasons, and for other reasons. So the man says, look, I will show you. You don't know me. You know the kind of, I know everybody. I know the IG was my classmate. When I put up a call now, they will arrest the entire village. And then he actually does, then he says, look, strip him naked and then bring the cameras. So people now, when the Nigerian police, when law enforcement agencies like EFCC, ICPC, and standards organizations like NAFDAC and the rest of them were now subject to this kind of monetary control because of what I refer to as a farm mentality. And the farm mentality is that in Nigeria, in quote, they say that where are they work, now they are they chop. So he manipulates the standards so that they can be tough enough to constrain a form of bribe from the person. These are the things. So I kept on saying, reduce this interface between people. Prof cannot, you cannot say it better than what Prof said. For example, if you are caught in a traffic offense in Abuja, be issued a ticket and be told that the next time, if you get 3 tickets, you will be deprived of your next application for a driver's license. And by the way, you probably may not be able to contest for such and such an election. You see, the goal of the law is to, elicit good behavior ultimately. So we need to understand that our laws, and you see, when I keep saying this, I want to say this because when the media emphasizes these standards, and the only thing known to people, whether in NTA, by NTA Hausa or NTA education or NTA entertainment, when the average individual knows the standard that of good behavior, he knows naturally that this is what is expected of him. But the absence, the total absence of standards being, portrayed in our media today is a problem too. So you find that we have been overtaken by the drive for material success, the drive as if money defines everything. No, we need to just build a country that will last, that will be the pride of not only the black man or Africa, but something that is enviable. I don't know, in closing, that any reason why we should be angry that when somebody looks down on us because he comes from a country that is, they call it developed country and we are less developed, when a country that has produced Wole Soyinka and the likes of Chinua Achebe and the best of brains in every area, and then you see, we cannot enforce simple traffic laws, and we cannot. And so the thing is this: something is wrong. But I think I want to throw it back to the media. I see myself, for example, I watched NTA instructional television, for example. I did, whether it's science or in literature or in social studies. But these days, what happens? You mentioned the word civics. Well, I mean, how much of the average Nigerian youth watches the NTA? Because it seems to be the only socializing institution that tells, not even the National Orientation Agency that has a statutory responsibility to that effect, that, broadcast standards. I still remember the things that I listened to, I listened to on Radio Nigeria or NTA 30 years ago are still on my mind. They still drive me. The Q culture came through war against the discipline. Unfortunately, a military culture, but somehow it was embedded in us. Yes. So the media has a lot of role to play. Give us the standards and Nigerians will conform. So that
nowadays nobody gets to ask you how many private jets you have.
You have.
Exactly.
Honestly speaking, NTA, for one, has been running some promotional jingles on some of the issues that you raise. Even presently, NTA runs them. And it just behoves on Nigerians to really understand what we're talking about. To say, look, let me be a good citizen. It's a very simple thing. But because of our culture, people want to get through it fast. And that's what's going on.
Kirian, don't say our culture. I'm sorry. Don't say our culture. That's what is normative now.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
now. It's not. It never always was embedded in
But
us.
it can change.
Yes,
it can change.
That's right.
We allowed the infiltration of a new culture that was attractive, but quite insidious against our own culture. Well, it's not about them, it's about us. We had it well in this country.
All right, let me get back to Bala Hassan once more. And this person also has to do with the issue of the lead agency when it comes to law enforcement. Yesterday, one of our guests, retired IG Suleiman Abba, said that internal command structure of police has been polluted by the officers themselves. And he called for reversal of the promotion of all officers who have been promoted ahead of their peers. Again, he said the command theory is often awkward. Before actions are taken, we hear of power from above and so on. Now, how can officers who do their jobs diligently be protected from external forces?
Thank you very much. Actually, in the course of this presentation, I did mention my dislike for all manners of promoting people not based on merit. Ideally, before you are promoted to the next round, you must have 3 upper recommendations. That's annual performance evaluation report. But there are days you see some people within 3 years they have gotten 2 promotions or 3 promotions over and above their mates. So this causes a lot of disaffection among the general police force. So, well, he's an inspector, a retired inspector general of police. That is his view. But the issue is whether that is practicable to reverse these promotions, because this thing cannot be done without the tacit agreement of the IG and the chairman of Police Service Commission. My take is that if they cannot reverse these promotions, they should ensure that this will be the last time this type of special promotions are allowed here and there, maybe 1 or 2 places based on political consideration, but not to carry a whole lot of people from below the rank and put them on top of their colleagues, over on top of their colleagues. Some were junior officers within, and they have already become assistant commissioners. So this thing brings disaffection. So somebody will not do his best in a situation whereby this police force is something based on discipline. You cannot take instruction from somebody who you are disciplining before. You are giving instruction about 3-4 years ago. Now he's not only above you, over and above you. So much. So this thing creates a lot of disaffection among the Nigerian police force. So this actually should be tackled. And also political consideration should be taken away in posting people to command. The IG knows all the officers. He knew those who were trained in the War College, now Defense College. He knew those who were who attended senior command staff college, who did very well. People will go to staff college for training for about 6 months, but when they come back, surprisingly, those who have never even known the way to VOM, they are the people whose name will appear in the promotion. This kills a lot of discipline. So actually the IG and the Police Service Commission should look into that. We cannot tell them once in a while to do based on political considerations. Maybe the high government officials wanted 1 or 2, but you don't use it as an open sesame to bring every manner of people to give them promotion to the extent that people are thinking that these things are done with pecuniary considerations. So this is my take on that. When this is taken away, give police what they desire to perform their functions, then that's better for law enforcement. And of course, as was said earlier, Nigerians should also know how to obey the law. This is the law, you obey it. It's not to your own detriment. So anytime you want to make law, make sure that the public know this law is for your own good. I remember 3 days ago, a lady called me that I work in Benin that she had been arrested. I said, what happened? She said she didn't carry plate number. And you are calling me to talk to an inspector of police. You didn't carry plate number, you know the law. No. Go to the court and get your just desire. So these are what we expect other people to do, either you're in a political arena or in a security arena. Let Nigerians know that this law is meant for them and they should protect it and obey the law.
Thank you very much, AIG Bala Hassan. That was a good one there. I mean, you didn't have your number plates and then you are having a vehicle on the road. So go and sort yourself out. Thanks a lot for that advisory. Professor Etanebi Olemika, we're coming to the close of this conversation because we have another subject matter to deal with. But quite clearly, I mean, the number of points that you guys have raised today have all been very interesting. I mean, law being a tool of correction, the law being a prescriptive tool, and ultimately, of course, where standards are breached, then law then becomes available for punishment. But we have also indicated, and this is, of course, the evidence that abounds everywhere, that in our country today, the law is a respecter of persons. And if we were to take the lead agency in law enforcement, say the police, we keep hearing order from above, and you know, a crook is arrested, and then of course the view is that a call comes from a superior officer saying release that person, and the individual is released, and then he begins to brag that his connections worked for him. How do we ensure that, look, the law is actually no respecter of persons? I know you already talked about the fact that we have elites and political capture of law enforcement agencies, but we must get away from all of this and get everybody back on the proper civics that we ordinarily should have in our society.
Thank you, Kingsley. I think it boils down to the quality of our democratic environment. If you have a consolidated institutional democratic culture and practices, organs of government will be independent to the extent that they are performing their functions according to law and not according to some authorities or according to some influential people. But as long as we have these arrangements, which I don't know what to call it in theory, is neither a democracy, is neither any other form that we know in political literature. As long as we have these whole system that is racketeering all over the place, we're not going to have a law enforcement that is autonomous in its decision, that is independent in decision making. So I think basically when you talk about law enforcement, we need to talk about the society in general, the political environment in which the directives, whether the law or other directives, are given to the police. I think really the other, no respecter of people is what I was calling, interference or elite capture. Virtually, you find people who have no business with law enforcement dictating how the law should be enforced. And of course, because the people in power do not have security of tenure, they are not probably qualified for the job, they were favored for the job, they themselves are obliged to pay back. So I think first we need a system of transparency, which goes with democracy, transparency of process. And I think that's what AIG Bala Hassan is saying. You must know what to expect, predictability. That's one of the qualities of law, predictability, that if I do this, this will be my reward. But once there is a disconnect between what you do and reward, then you are in a chaos. So I think I have no solution to how that can be done with respect, except deepening our democratic culture. And how do you deepen the democratic culture? Again, that sector is nothing easy to deal with. Kingsley, you know my view over a long period, that as we operate today, that the whole political election system itself is an organized crime. And that what we're calling parties and politicians are just criminal networks. And until we're able to deal with this matter, we're not going to have our institution to function properly. And I think that's the challenge we have. Nigeria must come together and realize we're not doing well. And we identify the reason we're not doing well is in the common interest for us to do well, not in the interest of a few as we have it today. So how the police will be independent, how other agencies will be dependent, the society itself must stand up and rescue them from those who have captured them.
Wow. Professor Etanebi Olemika, thank you very much. Kyria, the point that Professor Olemika says, of course, he's made a number of suggestions along with the other guests. We keep talking about democracy, and we always must remind ourselves that the cardinal element of democracy is rule of law.
Well, rule of law.
And embedded in rule of law is law enforcement.
And you know one thing, Kingsley, is the fact that politicians, for instance, during electioneering campaigns, politicians engage the services of cultists, engage the services of hoodlums, and these people, thugs, and they are armed. And then after the elections, nobody cares about those arms that they used during the elections. And so
the offenses that they committed.
Then you hear order from above. When any of them is arrested, you hear that the governor put a call across the police commissioner to say, release them. They are my boys. So this is part of the problem we're talking about. Well, I think we have done justice to this conversation, right? This is the
for today's installment.
Actually, you know, we started yesterday of this conversation, and I think we've been able to do justice to it. And at this point, we'd like to appreciate all our guests who made it possible for us to really engage in this conversation. First of all, let me appreciate Assistant Inspector General of Police, retired Bala Hassan, who reached us via Zoom. Thank you indeed, sir, for being part of our show this morning. We'd like to also appreciate Professor of Criminology and member, Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption, Tanibi Lamika. Thank you, Prof, for being here this morning. And again, our man here in the studio, who has always been, you know, our guest whenever we have the kind of issues that we tackled today. So we'd like to appreciate you for coming to this edition of the program. Frank Etete, a human rights lawyer. It's been a pleasure talking to you this morning.
Indeed.
All right. Now, we are taking a short break. When we return, we'll be engaging the General Assembly of the Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. Stay with us.
A new edition of TV Guide is out with special focus on the game changer, His Excellency Governor Abdullahi Sule of Nasarawa State. Broadcasting in a digital economy, Maxwell Logo gives an insight. This edition also features Nancy Naji of AIT, a name synonymous with business. Meet the NCDC boss, Dr. Chikwe Ihekweazu. TV Guide, your indispensable companion, also x-rays the relevance of social media in the modern society. Meet some TV professionals who have impacted their spaces and other inspiring stories in sports, entertainment, and lots more. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
Although social media as a channel of communication is inherently harmless, it becomes harmful and damaging when used without discretion and thoughtfulness. Bad social media users spread rumors and fake news without verification. But good social media users stop, reflect, and verify information before sharing it. Be a good social media user. Stop the spread of fake news. Verify the authenticity of your source and use social media responsibly for a better Nigeria. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, in collaboration with the National Orientation Agency.
The broadcast media ecosystem is dynamic and requires continuous training for practitioners to perform optimally. NTA TV College Jos invites relevant officers to the following specially packaged training programs. Intermediate online news reporting skills. Date 1st March to 12th March 2021. 2 weeks. Studio lighting indoor and outdoor. Date 1st March to 5th March 2021. 1 week. Modern trends in broadcast media marketing. Date 15th March to 9th April 2021. 4 weeks. Understanding public service rules and mastering the art of standard minute writing, reports, memoranda, and briefs. Date 15th February to 12th March 2021. 4 weeks. The course fee for the 4-week courses is 100,000 naira per participant. The fee for the 2-week course is 80,000 naira, while the course fee for the 1-week course is 40,000 naira only. Accommodation inclusive. Venue for all the courses is the serene and secure environment of NTA TV College near Old Government House, Rayfield, Jos. For more inquiries, please call 0803-314-4383 or 0806-980-9807. NTA TV College, Jos. Training you to be the best you want to be.
You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now to our second topic for today, which is on the forthcoming annual General Assembly of the Alumni Association of Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. That, of course, is just a couple of days away, and we have some of the officers of the Alumni Association here with us in the studios to let us into what to expect. First, we'd like to welcome the National President of the ABU Alumni Association, that's Professor Ahmed Tijani Mora, MNI, that's a member of the National Institute. Delighted to have you this morning.
Thank you very much.
Also here with us in the studios is the National Public Relations Officer of the ABU Alumni Association, Danjuma Mahmoud. Danjuma Mahmoud, delighted to have you with us this morning.
Gentlemen, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you.
All right, let me begin with the President of the Alumni Association. What are the key expectations at this year's General Assembly?
Well, thank you very much. The key expectations in this year's Annual General Assembly, which is the 14th in the series anyway, delegates from all the states of the Federation, 10 delegates from every state of the Federation, and 2 delegates from every faculty chapter will converge in Zaria and receive reports from the various officers. And again, exactly there's going to be an election. I'll be stepping down after 2 terms in office as president of the Alumni Association. Actually 5.5 years because of the extension here and there, here and there. So it's actually, there is excitement in the air, as it were, because of the election and the AGE. But at any rate, the AGE is preceded by an annual General Assembly lecture, which will take place on Friday, on the 26th of February. And it will be delivered by the Honorable Minister of Finance and National Planning, Hajia Zainab Shamsuna Ahmed, and an alumnus of the university. The Secretary of the Government of the Federation, His Excellency Boss Gida Mustafa, will be the chairman of the occasion. And the Governor of Kaduna State, Madan Nasir Ahmed Rufai, is the special guest of honor. So these are the expectations.
Well, tell us something. I mean, your alumni association appears to have a unique structure in terms of the General Assembly and the attendance that you are expecting from different parts of the country. Otherwise, how large is the body, and what is it that you have achieved under your tenure?
Thank you very much. The Ahmadu Bello University Alumni Association is the largest alumni association in this country, and I may say in West Africa, because we have the largest student population on campus in this country. We are talking about 800,000 plus alumni association, yes. And as we speak, we have 8 governors of the Federation are alumni of this university. There was a time we had 11. And I was even saying that 25% of Nigerians are being ruled by ABU alumni. We have achieved quite a lot under my leadership with my members of the National Executive Committee. What I will say precisely is that we are able to, for the first time in the history of the ABU Alumni Association, build a secretariat under my leadership. We have never had a national secretariat. We're able to bring cohesiveness, fellowship together. I toured the whole country in an attempt to reactivate and reinvigorate the various branches of the association all over the country. We have members all over the country. And I came in with 4 cardinal projects. The overhead pedestrian bridge, which we have completed. That is between Samaru and Samaru village and the main campus in Zaria. Across the Zaria-Funtua-Sokoto highway, it's become a death trap, fast-moving vehicle, knocking down pedestrians and students and staff alike. We have the student bus shuttle scheme. We have about 5 buses now, shuttling between the 2 campuses, Congo and Samaru campus. It has never happened before. To take the students from inside the campus, one campus, and then they disembark on the other campus. We have the laptop computer scheme, which is a project that I initiated that students could benefit from a laptop and then pay in installment, because not every parent or guardian could afford 100,000, 110,000 for a laptop. These are computer age. And then fourthly, we have the postgraduate student hostel, which we are building in the main campus anyway. So this I can say in a nutshell that what we have been able to achieve.
Yeah, that's a great deal of achievement.
Yeah,
if you ask me, because
quite interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you very much.
Let's bring in.
It was bragging about the size.
Yes. Let's not bring in
Thank you very much. That's what bragging about.
Public relations officer of Mahmoud Mohammed Danchuma. ABU has produced several notable persons in Nigeria, as representatives has actually told us. And I would like to find out from you, how has that impacted the development of the alma mater, apart from, of course, the achievements that he had within the time he has been the president of the Alumni Association?
Yeah, thank you very much. Like you rightly said, we have almost every strata of the society. There's always an alumnus, and in some, they constitute the majority. And the whole thing about Alumni Association actually is resource mobilization. And to the glory of God, ABU has benefited a lot from most of its alumnus members from across the country and even outside the country. I would like to specifically mention that organizations have brought a kind of intervention to ABU, like the Center of Excellence we have, which was financed by CBN, and this is partly because of the, the influence of some of the members in a way of bringing it to ABU Zaria. And also, of recent, there is a complete refurbishing of political science department by one of the graduates from the university, from that particular department, including provision of library, books, and also a bus, a coastal bus, for the purpose of movement of students of the department and even staff as well. The intervention, there are very many, and more is being expected. We have the ecological fund also, which has impacted so much on the ABU Site 2, because the university is expanding, and so the existing campus is not enough. There is Site 2, where more development is going on. We have also intervention from Dangote, Alhaji Aliko Dangote, president of Dangote Group, wherein he built 10 blocks of hostels, which has already been completed. Students are already occupying it. And the list is endless.
All right, thank you, Danjuma. Let's return to the national president.
Yes.
National president, what would you like to see going forward in terms of increased linkage between the Alumni Association and the alma mater? Yes, you've done a number of these physical projects, but I'm much more concerned about, say, look, endowments. Say you have a number of alumni who are out there in the fields, who are out there in the industry, more linkage between the industry and the ivory tower, so that some of the complaints that we have about our universities not being relevant to the industry may be addressed.
Yeah, thank you. There is the Directorate of University Advancement, which actually has more to do with these linkages, so to speak, in terms of endowment and linkages with other external bodies, so to speak. We collaborate with them through the university. The Director of University Advancement, I'm a member of the board of that advancement, and we work together, hand in hand together. We look at our own role as those of resources mobilization, as you said. Now, let's look at it this way. The purpose of any alumni association university in the whole world, there are 3 of them. 1, to raise the prestige and the good name of the university. Secondly, to intervene in times of crisis or if there are challenges within the university. And thirdly, resources mobilization, as he mentioned, for the purpose of raising the standard for learning, teaching, research, and community services in the university. That we do. During my tenure, for the first time ever in the history of the association, we established the USA branch, which are integrated in New Jersey in 2017. And we had the UK branch, UK and Ireland branch. And all these high net worth and distinguished members of our association thinking about making this endowment that you're talking about and bringing back in terms of foreign flow of investment into Abuja University area.
Oh yeah, thank you. Piero, tell us more about the preparations for this assembly. You're expecting delegates from different parts of the country and perhaps from outside Nigeria. And of course, the President has told us that we're going to have an election. So how prepared are you for this election? Now, what are you expecting?
Are you hiring INEC for the election?
Well, we are very much, preparation is ongoing, part of which is this media appearance to tell every alumni member in the nation and even outside the nation that this thing is coming up. Like you rightly said, it's the largest gathering we have and is the highest organ of the association. Yeah, people are coming. As I'm talking to you now, some delegates who are from far have already may possibly arrive Zaria today. Most of them will be coming in tomorrow in preparation because we have line of activities. The last lap of it is the election. But like the president rightly said, we have the pre-AG lecture, which is very, very fantastic. We have even compendium of series of lectures delivered, which we want to put into booklet. Yeah, before now, we usually have the AGA, that is the election in the Senate chamber. But this time around, we changed the venue to the Momonsoho Kontogora Square in order to adhere to the compliance with COVID-19 to ensure that there is social distancing. The atmosphere is very, very okay because it's a kind of voluntary service to our alma mater. A lot of people are willing, are really wanting to participate, to really, give back, because it's all about spirit of giving back to the university that made us what we are. There are offices that are in contest, but like I rightly said, it's not a kind of do or die. When you're saying whether we invite INEC, no. From among us, we are going to constitute the electoral officials. Yes, we have them. And it's, over the years, it has always been transparent. It's full of fun,
You have consensus candidates? Or?
No, not really. But we have some offices that are unopposed.
Unopposed, yeah.
Yes. But like the president rightly said, he's stepping out. That office is really in contention. Not because of anything, because ABU has already come to limelight under his leadership. Yes. Just like he has mentioned some of the things he has done. And everybody wants to see that he plays it upon that. It is always our wish that we move to next level.
All right, thanks. Professor Tijani Mora, yes. Once again, one of the key objectives of an alumni association, you spoke about crisis management. Now, I want to elaborate on the role of the alumni in this regard. Last year, and up until just a few weeks ago, the university system in the country was in crisis on account of the protracted ASU strike. I think Nasu, Sanu, and the others are still muscle flexing. What should alumni associations do to ensure that they step in, so that, again, the reputation of various universities suffer on account of these incessant industrial actions by university lecturers and indeed non-academic staff?
I agree with you 100%.
Yes.
Actually, it's cause for concern. Incidentally, I'm the national chairman of the Conference of Alumni Associations of Nigerian Universities, which is the umbrella body of all alumni associations in the country. And times without number, we had actually intervened, so to speak, and written letters and appealed to on one side, the federal government to do the doable, because it's all a matter of MOUs that were entered into 2009, 2013, I'm in the academic field and so on. But see, once the money is not there, it's not there. And then we also appeal to our colleagues, please, sheathe the sword, go back to the classrooms and the laboratories, because these children are suffering. And that's why the private universities, like you said, you don't brag that, look, they don't have ASU, they don't have union, and if you enter for a 5-year program, you'll graduate under 5 years. But sometimes you find that a student will be admitted for a 5-year program and he will end up with 8 years. It's not the best. We have appealed to our colleagues to please look at it as a national service. And we are doing our best. We participated in a workshop some times ago, and I gave a paper actually to the effect that to see how we can cushion, how we can actually finance university education in this country. Let me give an example. I just said that if we can just take 0.5% of the airtime, this mobile phone that we're talking about, I did the calculation, we came out with billions per month. You feel it. By the time they take just zero, assuming that every person who has a handset recharges it with 100 naira per day. I mean, I'm sure for elites like us, I mean, maybe 2,000 or thereabout. Just take 0.5% of that. 50 kobo, and then channel it into a particular fund and then fund university education. The problem with university education has to do with the numbers that we have. This is a large country. We're talking about 200 billion. We're talking about the appropriate remuneration and other things. Yes.
All right.
Sorry.
That's well said. We wish you a very successful General Assembly of the ABU. You are stepping down.
Yes, I'm stepping
and
down.
Of course, I'm sure you will also ensure that you're going to get a good replacement, so that all your legacies will be sustained.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So at this point, Kingsley would like to...
Yeah, Professor Moro's face is very bright. I'm sure he's quite satisfied with himself. And I do hope that the members will be satisfied with you when you do give your report at the annual general
Exactly,
Assembly.
I hope so too.
That's right. Professor Ahmed Tijani Mora, MNI, National President of the Ahmadu Bello University Alumni Association, would like to thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you very much.
We also would like to appreciate the National Public Relations Officer of the ABU Alumni Association, Danjuma Mahmoud. Thanks a lot for being with us.
Thank you, my pleasure.
All right, it's Good Morning Nigeria still. Let's take a look at sports before we wrap it up for today.